Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. And like I said, with this new format, which was recommended, so I decided to try it. The feedback I had from the first video is really good, so we're going to stick with that. What we're going to talk about tonight is more of a news update. We're going to talk about what's going on in Minneapolis, about Governor Cuomo, and an executive order signed by President Biden. But before we start with that, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Give me some comments. If you disagree with what I'm saying, go ahead and dislike and tell me why in the comments. What I will say is we have surpassed 5K in subscribers. So I thank you for that. The next goal is 10K, and the only way we'll get there is if you share these videos with your friends. What I've learned about the YouTube algorithms, if I post anything about Antifa, BLM, China, or apparently human trafficking, then the algorithm limits who it's shared with automatically, and it limits the monetization of it. I'm not as worried about the monetization as I am about the word getting out there. So please share with your friends. Let's keep growing as a channel. A lot of you like what I have to say. A lot of you want to hear what I have to say. So the only way to grow is if you share it with your friends, because at the rate we're going, I'm going to broach more things that are considered controversial. So there'll be less sharing automatically. And that's more important than anything else, is getting word out there. Because I'm not done talking about human trafficking. I'm not done talking about Antifa. I listened to the president's speech or address tonight. I'm going to do a video on that tomorrow because I want to go a little bit deeper into it and do some research and have my ducks in a row when I can then Fauci for being an idiot and a liar. But that's basically what he's proved to be. All right. So as we approach, right now they're going through the preliminaries for the trial in Minneapolis for former officer Chauvin. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I've heard it pronounced like 4 different ways. And the background, they arrested George Floyd. They pulled him out of the car, put him on the ground, put a knee to his neck, and he ended up suffocating in that position. The coroner, as I understand it, has found there were several reasons for what happened, to include narcotics in his system and what the officer did. And what I will say is everything I've read, everything I can find through research is, yes, the Minneapolis Police Department did teach that method with putting a knee on the neck. And I will tell you, as a former corrections officer who was also a defensive tactics instructor, so I was able to do the annual certification to help teach at the academy when we would teach officers what to do when it was time to go hands-on with an offender. And as an officer, I'm 5'8". I weigh between 190 and 200 pounds, depending on what day of the week it is. Let's be honest. You may go head to head with an offender who has you by 50 pounds and a few inches, and that's 50 solid pounds. And you learn pain compliance, and you learn different locks that you can use in different holds. What I will say, in a correction setting, chokes are not allowed. The knee to the neck is not allowed. But the way the officer was trained was this was a legitimate way to subdue a suspect. The problem was he held it for too long, which is my understanding based on physiology and just the way different methods to seduce someone works. So it goes back to a question of training more so than evil intent. Now, as we move forward, autonomous zones have been set back up in Minneapolis. And if you remember, when this initially happened in Minneapolis, you had riots, you had people trying to storm federal buildings, trying to set federal buildings on fire, as you did in Seattle and Portland and other places. Well, it's about a week ago now, because I'm a little bit behind times with doing the updates because I'm trying to get on a regular schedule and put out good information, but I'll just read it straight off the page. Grim tragedy erupted Saturday night when another man died near what is now called George Floyd Square. Now, that's an autonomous zone where they do not let police in. So if someone is injured, EMS is not going to enter an area without police securing the area first. They are hired, they are trained to provide emergency medical services. They're not trained to defend themselves against a possibly violent crowd, which, considering there's a victim of a gunshot wound, then there's probably some violent people in the crowd. So EMS isn't going to go in without the police. They're not letting police in. So they bring the body out. And at that point, the young man was dead. So could he have survived had they let them in? We will never know. Maybe the coroner can figure that part out. That's not for us to figure out. But that is not the first time in one of these autonomous zones where people have died. So I understand the need for people to vent and for people to protest and for people to stand up for what they feel is right. And if it is done in a peaceful manner, then I'm all for it. Like a few protests where they've laid down the streets and blocked roads, yes, it's an inconvenience for some people, but nonviolent protest is what we are founded on. The First Amendment allows for that. I would support that. I will contribute money to groups that are trying to do this. I will go out and march with them if they have one in my area and I know it's going to be nonviolent. The problem is it degrades to violence almost every time. And I would say the biggest problem is this violence negates your message to people like me. I spent 23 years in the Army, in a lot of it in third world countries. These autonomous zones and some of these groups and these riots are turning American cities into things that resemble the third world countries I served in. That is not what our country is about. If you want people to understand what you stand for and to support you, use peaceful means. If you do that, you will gain support, because as soon as you turn to violence, you limit the number of people that are willing to support you. Now, what's going to happen as a result of this trial, I don't know. I will probably do something on it here in the next week or so, once it's a little bit more underway and there's a clearer picture of what's going on. And two, I've exchanged a couple of emails with another YouTuber whose channel is Joe the Lawyer. And some of the stuff I talked to him about was I want to discuss treatment courts, but also I'll probably, because he's a defense attorney, is possibly going to this with him. And we can do a collaboration and maybe do one on my channel, one on his channel, and see what we think about it. Because I'm a political junkie, I'm a policy wog, but he's an actual defense attorney. So his knowledge is so much better than mine about exactly what they're doing. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, let's move over to Governor Cuomo. Wow. Let's see. I got awards for how I handled COVID, even though I violated rules. And now we're up to 6 accusers of his alleged inappropriate actions. I'm going to be very careful how I say this, but I think I'll let the headline speak for itself in this. And apparently, I read today one of these accusations has actually been reported to the police. So now there's going to be another investigation of it. Now, one of my issues with what we've seen in the last few years, the Me Too movement, I think, did some great things. I think all women deserve to be heard and believed. My issue with it is, depending on the party you talk to, all women deserve to be believed unless the alleged abuser is Bill Clinton, or apparently about half of Democrats, Andrew Cuomo. Because then they're crazy, or then it's an allegation. It hasn't been proven. Well, you know what? One woman, okay. 2 women, okay. When you get to a certain point, you have to believe there's something to this. And even if you don't believe it, it should still be investigated. And if it's investigated, it can be disproven. And if you're not willing to investigate it, then you tell me that you don't truly believe in these movements. Now, as far as Governor Cuomo, I don't like the way he handled New York during COVID. I don't like the fact that he put infected people into skilled care facilities, which led to, actually, I think they're still underreporting the number of deaths that it led to. But that is what it is. And that will come out. Now, with something being reported to the police, there should be a criminal investigation. And we will see from that what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. If he is guilty of this, if he has actually I'm being very careful how I say this. I'm trying to be very careful how I say this based on the algorithms and what they look for and what they don't look for. But if the accusations against him, even one of them, is confirmed to be legitimate, which I really think at least one of them will be, if not all of them, he needs to resign. He needs to be allowed to have his day in court. But some of these honors that were given to him, people really need to rethink how they decide who is important and who's not. Moving on. I'm going to talk about something in a way that other people haven't. And this goes to trans people serving in the United States military. I served for 23 years in the United States Army. I went from the rank of E1 private to retiring as a first sergeant. I led soldiers in garrison and training and in combat. I served throughout the world, and I love my time. I'm proud of the time I served in the United States military. I am truly proud to be a veteran. I'm truly proud to have been honored enough to be chosen as I promoted through the ranks to lead America's sons and daughters. I was working at an NCO Academy as a first sergeant for a senior leaders course when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was lifted. And in my honest opinion, it was lifted about 30 years too late, but it is what it is. It's gone now. I had friends, one of which I knew for all 23 years of service, that because we were good friends and because he trusted me, I knew he was gay. And he was in a relationship for longer than either one of my marriages lasted. So I don't have a moral leg to stand on with deciding that his lifestyle was wrong, because I don't think it was. I think love is what it is, and it chooses who it chooses. I don't have a problem with somebody's orientation. I don't have a problem with what they identify as. The issue I'll bring up when it comes to transitioning service members is one that I haven't heard or read anywhere, but it's one that actually affects units every single day. And this is through the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and Space Force. It is, at any given moment, at least 10% of the force is non-deployable based on injuries, recovery, or sometimes medication. A lot of times, psychotropic medications, if they are changed, means somebody's non-deployable for up to 90 days. Now, keep that in mind as I go into this. So if 10% of our military is non-deployable, and I am not a medical expert, but what I will say is my understanding of people choosing to go through a transition to what they feel is their true gender. And I respect that. I have nothing against that. But medications or surgical complications that lead them to being non-deployable adds to this non-deployable section. portion of the military. So that does affect the end strength that a unit can deploy to combat. Now, with that being said, I haven't heard that brought up as an argument against it. And I think there's ways to work around that, but I think that does need to be brought up because that's a legitimate. If you choose to go into the military, then more power to you. And I am proud of you for doing that, and I respect you for doing that, because 1% of our population is qualified to go in the military from a moral, emotional, psychological, physical standpoint. Of that, 0.5% actually do enter. So if you're part of that, then you're a huge minority in our population by just choosing, by being qualified and choosing to do that. Now, do I think if you have gender dysmorphia and you choose to go into the military, that like any other injury, like any other thing that can happen, the military should pay to make sure you're healthy? Physically, mentally, emotionally? Yes, I do. What I would propose is a 5-year contract. And in this 5-year contract, your first 3 years, you can go through the counseling portion of it, but you serve whatever specific job you choose for the first 3 years. The last 2 years, you serve in an administrative position or as an instructor position, because honestly, there's always a shortage of qualified instructors. But that is where the Department of Defense fully funds whatever transition you've chosen. That is through hormones, that is through surgical means. But for that 2 years, your sole job is an administrative or instructor position and to transition. And it's fully funded. And the reason I say this, if you're a taxpayer and you're complaining that this is stupid and we shouldn't look at it this way, well, look at the Supreme Court decisions about people incarcerated that are going through transition. If that process has already started when they enter a corrections institution, why don't you look up what we're paying for? And if my tax dollars are going to that, then I don't have an issue with my tax dollars going to do it for somebody who chooses to serve in the military. I just think we could be more effective in how we do it and smarter about how we do it to look out for the force as a whole. I know this is going to be unpopular to some people, but that's what I believe about it. And if you disagree with me, then go ahead and dislike, and we'll have a debate in the comments. But I will tell you this, if you've never looked at the non-deployable roles and tried to explain why soldiers are non-deployable, you've already lost one of your legs to stand on. So think about that before you try to beat me up in the comments. But if you want to, go ahead. We'll have the debate. I have no problem with that, because mine is based on experience of dealing with non-deployable soldiers for legitimate reasons and others that aren't as legitimate, because those happen too. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I like the new format. I think it's working well. What I will say is I listened to President Biden's address. I want to go through it a little bit deeper, like I said, and I want to go into some of the COVID stuff and talk about Dr. Fauci. So that'll be coming probably tomorrow night. If you like what I have to say, like, subscribe, share with your friends. Thank you for getting me over 5K. That's really a cool moment. The next goal is 10K. If you disagree with what I'm saying, subscribe anyway so you can hit dislike and tell me in the comments what you disagree with in every video. All right, everybody have a good evening.